All right, everybody. Welcome back again. This is Andrew Hartman with Xathlon, coming with you today to talk about some resources and some stuff I've talked about previously, and kind of want to show some examples of what I mean. But before we get into that, as always, find us on social media. Find us on YouTube. YouTube is Xathlon. Twitter is at Academic Xathlon. Facebook is Academic Decathlon Central by Xathlon. Again, Dimidek Talk on the message board is I'm Stanley Tree. Nixon Notice is the founder, owner, operator of Xathlon. So if you want to get in contact with us, find us in any of those places. I know somebody left a YouTube comment on the last video. I haven't responded to yet. I apologize. I will get to that after I record this, actually, because I just remembered it. So today, what I wanted to point out or talk about is recall learning. Okay. One of the biggest issues I have had throughout my years coaching decathlon is that the further away you get from something, the less you remember of it, right? And so it's a siphon, right? It's a brain drain where students are forgetting stuff that you did, a month or two ago because they haven't gone back and looked at it. And so one of the things we try to implement this year, and I think so far fairly successfully, is our recall writing. And so we've done a few things in general about recall. We started with recall note taking in class, like trying to write down the stuff you remember, but that was just really tough to ask them to do, especially with the amount of time we have. It just wasn't that useful. So instead, we just cut it down to discussion of the stuff from the night before, right? Talk about stuff, go through it with your group. They usually are in groups of 4, maybe 5. And we also did we were using the quizzes, the Xathlon the USAD combo quizzes, which go usually about a section each, and they're a mixture of multiple choice, fill in the blank, and we tried to do that without like looking at the resources, which I thought was useful, but I actually kind of want to save those for later now at this point because we've started to use some other stuff that was actually created by me. And I have been vocal proponent of not reading the material with the students, or at least let me phrase that: teaching them the material. I don't think that's very useful. So, but I kind of realized if I wanted some of the resources I wanted, right, it wasn't going to necessarily come from anywhere. Um, Xathlon has really great resources, but I really needed something specific for us. And so I started building the things we needed, and I wanted to share that with you guys, and I'm going to make them public, make them available for everybody. I would like to clean up the format, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and release as is at this point. They are, it's what I guess I would probably call something like recall packets, recall outlines, right? And so let me just show you guys one. They're the two I've worked on, right? So so Demodec has had stuff in the past, books in the past that I believe to be personally just too elementary, very much like fill in the blank for the most part, and very simple stuff. And I'm not a fan of it, and I'm also not a fan of the way that teams tend to implement that. They tend to implement that as the thing that really goes along with reading, which if I was to use a workbook this year, I would definitely 100% not do that. I don't think that's useful. That's very like to me as somebody when I taught regular world history, I used that kind of stuff for days I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? And so I and so I don't see those as actually good, but rather a waste of time, to be honest. If you use them like that, if you use them as recall, they're probably pretty good, or at least decent. But the problem is they also feed you most of the information so that they can pretty quickly recall the thing. Whereas what I've done here is much less in terms of what information I'm giving them. Right, and so you can see here the instructions. Define and identify key points of each of the following songs, pieces, albums, composers, and artists. For the songs, pieces, and albums, also identify the person who created it and any key points about that person. So These are really open-ended. Okay. Some of them are really open-ended. Some of them are going to get really specific. But um, it's just very simple things, right? My Fair Lady, right? Just the name of the play. What they're probably going to need to figure out or what to remember is the composers of it, and the year it was released, right? I think those might be the only two things that they cover about that. I don't off the top of my head, I don't remember. I did this one probably a few weeks back. Um, right, and so I've been refining this as I've been doing them. Right, I've kind of started to figure out what I want, and each resource is hard to write, is different to write for. Um, but um, Kennedy's first as presidents, right? What I specifically mean by this is he's the first president born in the 1900s, and he was also the youngest president, which isn't necessarily first, right? But he is, first place in a sense. So I wanted them to kind of get an idea of that. Television in the 50s, right? So what that should do is that should recall to them, hey, okay, so it was this booming uh, industry, this booming entertainment industry. Exactly how many televisions or how many households had televisions over the course of the 50s, I believe, is the fact that they have in there, right? And so, yeah, I don't want to guide them that much. What I really want to do is try to see what they can remember, right? So we kind of go through here, right? Treats a Bye Bye Birdie that signaled the beginning of the 60s. I really like this one in particular because what I'm looking for is the aspects of Bye Bye Birdie that signify, hey, this is transitioning into the 60s, not necessarily like a 60s play in that sense, because it's still a very classic style of musical theater, but it's it's very youth focused, right? It's got Elvis Presley kind of as or a fake Elvis Presley as the main protagonist, and then it's also got this notion of or sorry, they have guitars in their music, which is really uncommon at this point in this music too. So those are the kind of things I'm looking for. And you see here next to iconoclastic composers, I have three, and that means I'm looking for three people on this, right? So whenever there's a parentheses like that, that's what that does. Shout out to my department head, Mrs. McMahon, for I saw her do this on a bunch of stuff when we used to work together in AP World History. I think it's a very simple way to not give away too much information, right? Stuff like that. And some of these are just definitions, right? Just define aleatoric music. Aleatoric music. 433, right? A lot more there. You have to explain a lot about that thing. So yeah, I use this, and so what we do, the way we do it, is that once we've done this section, whether it's the next day or whether it's a week after, is that I give them this packet, and I actually just figured out, I think, what the schedule is for today, excuse me, like of how I want them to progress through this at home on their own. Originally it was just like, hey, this is due next Monday, right? We give it to you Monday, it's due in a week. What I've decided is that I like doing it as 2 pages, 1 page a day, 1 page front and back. So this page, right, and with 33 place of tonal music by beginning in the 60s, because that will begin page 3, right? That's kind of the pace we want them to go at. I think that's not unreasonable. And the way we want to do it is that we give them through the first time through, I want them to just try to do this without even looking at the resource, right? I want them to try to do this just off the top of their head, see what they can remember, right? And then that should give them a general idea of A, what they remember, but also B, like where they are on this resource, right? Maybe they need to go back in a little more detail than just what we're asking them. And then they go a second time through with the resource in hand and kind of fill in this thing a little bit more. And I've heard from different students different positives, right? From some students, they're like, oh, I like recalling the stuff I remember. It makes me feel more confident, and then also like it allows me to kind of focus my studies. And then some of the kids were like, I really like that. It makes me go back and look at stuff. So I find these so far, these seem to be good. These seem to be useful. Our kids, while some of them are grade driven, right, in terms of like getting a good grade in our class, so a lot of them are driven by being really good at decathlon, and so I trust their opinion that this is useful to them. So I have done this so far for music fundamentals in section 2 of music. Section 3 music is massive, so I kind of looked at it and was scared away for now. We're actually testing on music today, and so hopefully that will go well. We'll see. Or yeah, we're testing out tomorrow. Excuse me. Well, I'm cautiously optimistic about that one. Um, I actually felt worse about economics, but we took economics and did really well on it. And I think it was one of the reasons we did really well on it is because we kept tracking back to old stuff, right? And speaking of economics, here's the economics one. And so this one's actually a little bit more closer to done. I think I'm on page 80 on this one, whereas on the music one, I think I'm closer to page 50 or 60. So it's going to take a while for me to get done, but I can hopefully bang out about 20 pages a night of writing this up. It gets tougher in economics because it's asking them, very like a lot of it's kind of like trying to find practice stuff, right? So if I go find, um, let's see, I just did some the other day. Here we go. All right. So I asked them to diagram some PPFs, right? So I give them the space over here to diagram that PPF out, right? And then so I give them that space to do it. And then today I just got to the circular flow model, which is much tougher to do, right? Where'd it go? I just want to have it. Right here, right? Give them this space to work on the circular flow model. And so yeah, so basically, again, the idea is to just give this to them as we go, right? And then, you know, hopefully they could start memorizing stuff. And some of this stuff is what I like about this is that it kind of captures the idea that everything's important, right? For example, gross domestic product. That just means to define the term gross domestic product, not that hard. Total real output of U.S. since 1900, right? What has changed over the course of this time, right? They're going to recognize that. I think it changed eightfold, something like that, right? Um, it gets very. Ooh, that's a error right here. I'm going to go ahead and just do that real quick. It gets very broad and simple. Define average labor productivity, right? Very specific. China's per capita production compared to the United States, right? In a very direct sense. Because it asks for that stuff, right? And so I really like allowing them to go back and do this. I think they're finding it useful. I think I find it useful, and we didn't start doing this at full blast until recently. And previously, what we've done with econ before we took our test was we went through some important stuff, some stuff they forgot, right? We allowed them to ask us questions because me and my co-coach, Kelsey, are both econ people. She's actually macro and I'm micro, which works out really well. And so they asked us some questions. We actually took some days to just go through stuff like, hey, here's how this works, here's how this works, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that worked really well. But also combined with the idea that we kept going back to these old ideas, right? We kept going back to previous things that they had talked about, like maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, right? Hey, like, all right, so maybe we're doing section 4, right? Maybe we're on the end of economics, right, in the 60 section. But now, actually, what I want to do is I want to go back to a little bit and have you guys diagram taxes, which actually led to kind of the video I did recently about economics and stuff. So I find this stuff very useful, and I think the kids really, really like it. Don't really like it; it's a lot of work, but they appreciate its usefulness of recalling that stuff, because otherwise we're going to forget that stuff by the time we get to meet that matters, and so we're going to go through science and art here in the next about a month, right? Or SOSI and art, excuse me, in the next month. I think we'll get that done. But so we're going to then ask them to just off the top of their head recall economics and music. That seems difficult. That seems really tough and unfair. And the beauty about this is, another great thing I like about it is, once they have done this the first time and they turn it into us and we keep it, right, somewhere down the line, whether it's November, whether it's December, whether it's January, February, March, whenever, right, hopefully March, we can then just give them the packet again, right, just a fresh sheet, right, and see if there's more stuff that they remember now, or less, and then we need to go back and figure some stuff out, right. And so I do want to do one last thing here. It's a little braggadocious because I'm super proud of what happened here. I want to show you guys our test scores on economics so that I can kind of display that, like, well, two things either happen. Either that test is super easy, which is likely, or we really know economics. So let me pull that up here. Okay, so I'm back to show you guys our score sheet. Again, here's our score sheet, what it's been looking like in general. They're not doing too bad. They've actually done really well on econ, or excuse me, on music since we ditched econ, right? And so I have some extrapolations out here, which are not, again, that useful. And lots of things are going to change once we start adding math in here, because we have some kids who are very good at math. We have some kids who are, not quite there yet. So we're done with music. We have shut the door on music. That one's done. Some of these numbers are really low just because they're not in the class, and that makes it tough for them to come in consistently. Sorry, we shut the door on econ, not music. We shut the door on econ. So I want to show you guys our test scores from econ to show that I think I'm pretty confident that we know what we're doing, right? So some aberrations aside, right? We have, lots of 800s. These are our varsities, right? Lots of 800s and a 900. 800s, 700s, 800s, and then a 960, 700, 920, another 900, 780, 880, 640, 880. So those are our scholastics, right? And so our top scholastics are 960, 920. Our top varsities are 920, 880, with like an 860, an 840, and 840 behind them, and then behind our 960, 920 appears a 900, two 880s, two 860s. Like, I'm really confident that they know some econ at least a little bit. And then our honors 960, 920, 920, 900, 880, 860. Really just a lot of people who seem to understand econ pretty well. So I'm pretty happy about that, especially because econ is a really tough one to learn as a first time learner, right, of learning econ. And then this would be our team score for the test, which if we do that in real life ever, I will be out the moon. Right, I will go crazy. That's insane. Again, these tests could be super easy. I really don't know. I haven't talked to anybody else who's looked at these, and just the little bit I looked at it, I was like, these don't seem too bad. But even if it is an easy test, I'm really encouraged by this, because this means that for the most part, we have our fundamentals down. Like they have the notions of economics and what it's supposed to be, and that is really exciting to me. Because that allows us then to build on top of that later a lot better than last year, where we would ditch a subject and then come back to it months later and hope that they like knew it all. So anyways, yeah, I will put these out. I'm gonna talk to Nick, see what he exactly wants to do with it. It's probably going to be in a link in the comments of this video. I need to kind of I need to mesh the music ones. I might even add some more instructions for both of them, because again, I think that I worry that people will use these in the way that I kind of talked about not doing, right? With the idea of like using it as you go, which is not that useful unless you then imply or plan on doing it later. Again, right? So I will post these, but I found these very useful, and I kind of hope those scores are evidence that like this idea of going back and learning this stuff over and over and over again is useful. We will see with music. Maybe that music test is stupid hard and we get our butts kicked, and then I'm back to the drawing board on all this. But even if it is a butt kicking test, I feel really confident that our kids will be able to do fairly well on it. So yeah, that's the video for today. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, again, just leave it in the comments of the YouTube section, or go to the Facebook page, which you'll see down at the bottom here. I would love to hear from people about what they think about this idea, or if they've been implementing it, or how to implement it if they have questions. Yeah, I am really excited about this idea as a combined with the other stuff we do, right? I don't think this is the only thing you can do, or like the crux of it. This is a supplemental thing that makes us just that much better, I hope. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and have a great day. Before I go, one last thing we want to do here is we want to start also promoting other people's resources, right? To create a free community of resources that other teams have created, other students have created for their kids. We would love to be able to collaborate like that. And so if you guys have any, email it to us at Academic Xathlon through the contact information here on the webpage. Shoot it to us through Facebook. Shoot it to us through on the YouTube comments. Right, just leave a link there or something like to a Dropbox file, or go to the message board again so we can kind of start compiling this community group of documents and ideas and resources that can be useful to any type of team. Right. So sorry again. You guys have a great day.